Hello students, today we will be studying about the development of pharyngeal apparatus. So in this, our specific learning objectives are that you should be able to describe the development of pharyngeal apparatus, its components and the derivatives, and you should be able to explain the embryological basis of bronchial system fistulas. This topic will be covering in our next lecture that is the pharyngeal apparatus part 2. In this, we'll be focusing just how the pharyngeal arches are being formed and mainly the what are the components, that is the cartilaginous components of the pharyngeal arches. So in earlier lecture, you must have read about the foregut. This was our embryological or the primitive gut, which has been incorporated into the during the folding of the embryo. So there was foregut, midgut, and hindgut. Now the foregut had two parts. That was a pre-laryngeal part, which was divided by this tracheobronchial diverticulum into a pre-laryngeal part and a post-laryngeal part. So the post-laryngeal part was forming the esophagus in the stomach, which we have already read, and the first part of the duodenum. Now this pre-laryngeal part, now we are concerned in this topic, which will be forming the pharyngeal arches and the pouches. So what is the pharyngeal apparatus? So it consists of pharyngeal arches, pharyngeal pouches, pharyngeal clefts, and the pharyngeal membranes. So all these structures, they contribute to the formation of head and neck region. So over here you can see this one is the primitive pharynx or the primitive gut, which is the pre-laryngeal part, and these are the side walls of the primitive gut. So the pharyngeal arches, these are 5 in number: first, second, third, fourth, and sixth. Fifth does not appear. So these are 5 in number, and they are present in the lateral wall of the floor and the floor of the primitive pharynx. So what are the pharyngeal clefts? These are 4 in number. So these are the dippings on the external part. This one is the outer part, this one is the internal part. So you can see these are the invaginations. So they are present between these pharyngeal arches. So since the pharyngeal arches are 5 in number, so the pharyngeal clefts or the grooves, they are 4 in number, and they are lined externally by the ectoderm. Now, what are the pharyngeal pouches? The third component is the pharyngeal pouches. So, on the inner side of the pharyngeal apparatus, they are also 4 in number, and these are present between the two adjacent pharyngeal arches, and they are lined by endoderm. So, the red color lines, these are the pharyngeal pouches. So, these are 4 in numbers. So, externally we have pharyngeal clefts, and internally, that is towards the primitive gut or the primitive pharynx, we have pharyngeal pouches. Now, what are the pharyngeal membranes? These are also 4 in number, and they are located between the two adjacent arches. Where pharyngeal cleft and pouches, they are in close approximation with each other, or they are opposed to each other. So there are 4 pharyngeal membranes. So what is the component of a pharyngeal arch? If we look at a one pharyngeal arch, so it has got a core of mesoderm, which is derived from paraxial mesoderm and the neural crest cells. It is covered externally by ectoderm and internally by endoderm. So it has got a cartilaginous rod or a bar, which is derived from neural crest mesenchyme. It has got a pharyngeal arch artery, which arises from the corresponding horn of the aortic sac of the primitive heart, and it has got a nerve, which is derived from the neuroectoderm of the primordial brain. So these are the components of pharyngeal arch: a core of mesoderm, derived from neural crest. It has got a cartilaginous bar, an artery, and a nerve. So over here you can see this is a diagram which is showing all the cranial nerves which will be innervating all the pharyngeal arches. These are the cranial nerves. Then this second one, the blue one, is the cranial neural crest cells which are migrating in their corresponding pharyngeal arches. And the third one is the muscles which are arising from the corresponding, from the paraaxial mesoderm and the somites, which are forming the muscles of the pharyngeal arches. So the unsegmented paraaxial mesoderm forming the extraocular muscles and contributing the first, second, and the third arch muscles. And these are the S1, S2, S3, S4, and S5. These are the occipital somites, which are migrating and forming the tongue muscles and the laryngeal muscles. And the fourth one is the arteries arising from the aortic arches, giving supplying the corresponding pharyngeal arches and the pouches. And the fourth one is the clefts, the pharyngeal clefts and the pouches. These are the clefts, and these one are the yellow one are the pouches. So what is the fate of the pharyngeal arch component? So a pharyngeal arch mesoderm, the fate of the pharyngeal arch mesoderm, it is contributed by the neural crest cells, the paraaxial mesoderm, and the lateral plate mesoderm. They are all contributing, these three are the contributions to the pharyngeal arch mesoderm, which is forming the core of a pharyngeal arch. Now, the neural crest cells, they are contributing to the skeletal elements of the pharyngeal arch and the connective tissue of the head and neck, which will form the dermis. Now, these skeletal elements give rise to the cartilaginous rod, which we have already seen, which will either disappear or it will persist as a bone or a cartilage in the adult form, or the perichondrium of it persists as a raphe or a ligament. Then there is a paraaxial mesoderm, which is forming the muscles of head and neck region, and the lateral plate mesoderm is contributing to the laryngeal cartilages, that is the arytenoid and the cricoid cartilage and the connective tissue of the larynx. Now, what is the fate of the pharyngeal arch artery and the nerve? So we have seen there was a ventral and the dorsal aorta. The two ventral aorta will fuse to form the heart tube, and the two dorsal aorta, they fused because of the folding, the lateral folding, and they are forming the dorsal aorta. Now, the dorsal aorta and the primitive heart tube, they are connected by these aortic arches, which will run around the primitive gut. So, the pharyngeal arch arteries, they are connected to ventral and the dorsal aorta, which are surrounding this primitive pharynx. Okay? And then there is a pharyngeal arch nerve. So there is a pre-traumatic and the post-traumatic nerve. The pre-traumatic nerve, which will run at the caudal end of a pharyngeal arch. So this will disappear, and the post-traumatic, it will remain. So post-traumatic is running at the cranial end. So this will remain and it will give rise to the motor innervation and the sensory innervation of the pharyngeal arch. Trema means grooves. So there are grooves, the pharyngeal grooves. So one is running at the cranial end and one it is running at the caudal end. Then we have the pharyngeal arches. The pharyngeal arches, they start developing at the 4th week of intrauterine life. So the first pair of the pharyngeal arch, it will form the primordium of the jaws, and they appear as a surface elevation lateral to the pharynx. Then soon it is succeeded by the appearance of the other arches, which are disposed obliquely. So they appear as rounded ridges on each side of the future head and neck region. So these all are appearing as ridges, and they are appearing in craniocaudal sequence, one after the another, and they are disposed obliquely on both the sides of the primitive pharynx. So by the end of the 4th week, the 4 pair of arches, they are visible externally, and the 5th and the 6th arch, they are rudimentary and are not visible on the surface of the embryo. The pharyngeal arches, they are separated by these grooves. They are known as pharyngeal grooves or the tremas. And like the pharyngeal arches, the grooves are also numbered in the craniocaudal sequence as first, second, third, and fourth. Now, what is the fate of a pharyngeal arch? The pharyngeal arches, they contribute extensively to the formation of face, nasal cavities, mouth, larynx, pharynx, and the neck region. Now, during 5th week, the second arch, it will overhang, it will enlarge, and it will overgrow the third and the fourth arches, and it will form an ectodermal depression. This depression, it is known as cervical sinus, right? So by the end of 7th week, the second to the fourth pharyngeal grooves and the cervical sinus have disappeared, giving the neck a smooth contour. So a smooth contour is attained by 7th week of intrauterine life. Now we'll first see the cartilages of each arch. So the first arch cartilage separates into two prominences, the maxillary prominence and the mandibular prominence. The maxillary prominence will give rise to maxilla, zygomatic bone, and a portion of the vomer bone which will form the nasal septum. Now there is a mandibular prominence as well. So this mandibular prominence will form the mandible. So the proximal mandibular prominence, it will also form the squamous part of the temporal bone. So first pharyngeal arch cartilage will form the two prominences, maxillary prominence and the mandibular prominence. Maxillary prominence will give rise to maxilla, zygomatic bone, and the vomer bone, and the proximal mandibular portion will form, the mandibular prominence will form the mandibular process or the mandibular bone and the squamous part of the temporal bone. What is the cartilage of the first arch? The maxillary and the mandibular prominence, they contain a transient central cartilaginous element. Transient means they will only be obvious for a shorter period of time. So the central cartilage of the maxillary prominence is known as palato-pterygoquadrate cartilage. Palato-pterygoquadrate cartilage, right? And the central cartilage of the mandibular prominence is known as Meckel's cartilage. So cartilage of the first arch is the palato-pterygoquadrate cartilage and the Meckel's cartilage. Then what are the derivatives of these cartilage? The proximal part of the Meckel's cartilage will form the malleus. Its middle part will regress, but its perichondrium will persist as anterior ligament of the malleus and the sphenomandibular ligament, right? Now the ventral part of the first arch cartilage forms the horseshoe-shaped primordium of the mandible. So the cartilage mostly disappears as the mandible develops around it by intramembranous ossification, except at the lingula and the genioid tubercles. When you will read about the mandible, you will see the genial tubercles, they are 4 in number, and the lingula, they represent the Meckel's cartilage, right? So the derivative of the first arch cartilage is the malleus, anterior ligament of the malleus, the sphenomandibular ligament, the mandible as a whole. Then the palato-pterygoquadrate bar. It forms incus, which is a small middle ear bone, and a small bone in the lateral orbital wall, which is known as LE sphenoid. So palato-pterygoquadrate bar is giving rise to incus and LE sphenoid. So what are the derivatives of the first arch cartilage? Malleus, incus, interior ligament of the malleus, the sphenomandibular ligament, the mandible as a whole, and a small bone, LE sphenoid. And what are the skeletal elements? The maxilla, the zygomatic bone, the squamous part of the temporal bone, and the mandible as a whole, and the vomer bone of the nasal septum. Or these are the derivatives of first pharyngeal arch cartilage. Then comes the second pharyngeal arch cartilage. Now the human second arch cartilage is known as the Ricard's cartilage. So this arch will ultimately form stapes of the middle ear the styloid process of the temporal bone. Whenever you'll see the skull, you'll see a small, a big projection behind the mystoid process that is known as a styloid process. A fibrous ligament, which is a stylohyoid ligament extending from the styloid process to the hyoid bone, and the lesser horns and the upper rim of the body of the hyoid bone. So all these are the derivatives of the Recurt's cartilage, which is a cartilage of the second pharyngeal arch. Now the third arch cartilage, the ossification of this cartilage occurs endochondrally and it forms greater horns and lower rim of the body of hyoid bone. So hyoid bone is formed both by the second and the third arch cartilage. The second arch forming its upper part of the body and the lesser horn, and the greater horns and the lower rim contributed by the third arch cartilage. Then the fourth and the sixth arch cartilage, they will fuse to form the laryngeal cartilages except for the epiglottis, which was contributed by the hypobranchial eminence at the floor of the primitive pharynx. The fifth pharyngeal arch is rudimentary and it has got no derivatives. So the cartilage of the fourth and the sixth arch, they will form the laryngeal cartilages except the epiglottis. So this epiglottis will develop from the mesenchyme of the, I told you, hypobranchial eminence, which is the embryo at the in the embryonic pharynx, and it is derived from the third and the fourth pharyngeal arches. Now the clinical considerations of the first pharyngeal arch, mainly the mesodermal components. So first one is the Treacher-Collins syndrome. It is also known as the first arch syndrome. It is also known as mandibulofacial dysostosis, and it is an autosomal dominant disorder. It is characterized by hypoplasia of the maxilla, mandible, and the zygomatic arches. Hypoplasia means a small mandible and maxilla and the zygomatic bone. And these arches may be absent also. The cleft palate is mostly associated with the cleft palate. There is rotation of the ear which is evident. So atresia of the auditory canals and middle ear abnormalities are there. Middle ear abnormalities are there. So ossicle formation are also affected. So it leads to bilateral conductive hearing loss. Excuse me. Now the eyes are also involved because the mandible and the facial skeleton are involved. So there is down slanting palpebral fissures and lower eyelid colobomas. Colobomas means there is deficient formation of the lower eyelid. There is a protein which is known as treacle, which is defective over here. Now it is necessary for preventing apoptosis and maintaining the normal proliferation of neural crest cells, but it does not regulate their migration, which occurs normally. So that is why this is defective. So there is neural crest cells migration is also defective over here. So that is why the first arch element, the maxilla mandible, they are not formed properly. This is known as Treacher-Collins syndrome. Then we have a golden hair syndrome, that is hemifacial microsomia. It is also known as oculo-auricular vertebral spectrum. It includes a number of craniofacial abnormalities. It includes maxillary, temporal, and the zygomatic bones, which are very small and flat. Ear is also not formed. There is microtia, small ears. In eye, there are tumors and dermoids in the eyeball, and the vertebrae are also fused. There are hemivertebras and spina bifida, which are commonly associated with it. So it is also a neural crest cell abnormality. So it is golden hair syndrome. Then there is a Robin sequence which occur independently or it may occur in association with syndromes like Treacher-Collins syndrome. So there is a triad, that is micrognathia, that is a small mandible. Then there is a cleft palate. The palate is not fused. And there is glossoptosis, that is because the mandible is small, small jaw is there. So the tongue, it is mainly protruded outside. So that is known as Robin sequence. So it is also all, this is also found when the first arch structures are not formed properly and mandible is most severely affected. So these are all the derivatives or the clinical considerations of the first pharyngeal arch. In our next lecture, we'll study about the pharyngeal pouches and the clefts and the muscles and the arteries.